You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, 3 Men and a Mystery, Malice, Riddle Me That, All Things Crime, and Zodiac Speaking. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss a missing persons case on this podcast, please be sure to visit missingpersonspodcast.net. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to look for their missing loved ones. In some cases, even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us.
Please stay tuned at the conclusion of this episode to hear about our Patreon program and our commitment to help find people who have gone missing. We'll also share with you where you can find more information and how you can join our team and help our efforts. You'll get recommendations for other podcasts we think you'll enjoy, and more.
So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing. Episode 24, Jack Berry Jr. In 2008, Jack Lee Berry Jr. was 32 years old and living in Terre Haute, Indiana. Jack was native to the area and had graduated from North Vigo High School. He ran his family's painting business and in his spare time loved to play paintball and do tricks on his bike. He was close with his family, including his young son, and according to them, everyone liked Jack, who was an easygoing guy. He had lived at the same address on Park Avenue for the past 9 years. Jack was last seen by his father, Jack Berry Sr., on December 16th near 5th and Elizabeth Avenues in the White Oak Place subdivision. But there was no sign of him for 2 days after that time. On the 18th, a friend of Jack's stopped by his house and found it locked, with the dog inside barking. The friend hadn't been able to get in touch with Jack for 2 days, and he noted that the dog was clearly in distress. And Jack's family hadn't seen or heard from him either, which was unusual. So the friend called the Terre Haute Police Department, who began actively investigating the case. Investigators located Jack's van parked right near the Wabash River. There was no sign of Jack. Police tracked down Jack's friend, 23-year-old Brent England, based on a tip from a friend of Jack's who knew that he had been headed to England's place on the day he vanished. Jack and England were good friends. According to Jack's sister, Chrissy John, Jack and England hung out together regularly, riding bikes and playing video games. England admitted to authorities that he had seen Jack on the 16th, the day he had last been heard from. He even admitted that Jack had been at his house. Jack was on probation and was not supposed to be anywhere near guns, but he had asked England to store 2 handheld firearms for him, and he had called and said he wanted to come over and retrieve them. This was around noon on December 16th. Jack's phone records reflected this call around 12:11 p.m., and that was the last activity on his phone. After that, it went off network and could not be tracked. According to England, Jack came over to get his guns, and when Jack arrived, England told Jack that he had pawned them. They agreed that England would pay him for the guns, and Jack left. England said that was the last time he had seen or heard from Jack. Jack's van was found about a block and a half from England's home on White Oak Lane, so police knew that Jack hadn't driven off from England's house, at least not very far. England consented to a police search of his home and vehicle. Brent England was arrested in March 2009 for the murder of Jack Barry Jr. In his home, police had found blood spattered on a box in his garage. They found a substantial amount of blood pooled in the trunk of his red Saturn, as well as on duct tape and bandages. And the blood turned out to be Jack's. But they did not find Jack's body, and police would not comment on their theory of the case, the murder weapon, or a possible motive. England explained the blood by saying they had gone turkey hunting recently and Jack had cut his leg and it bled. But there was too much blood to have come from a cut. Prosecutors weren't buying England's story, and they proceeded to try him for Jack's murder, despite the absence of a body. Unfortunately, the trial did not go well. Before the trial, the prosecution failed to meet a deadline to submit information regarding an expert witness to the defense team. Consequently, the judge ruled that at trial, the prosecution could not call this witness, who had planned to testify about the significance of the blood evidence found at England's home. The judge also refused to allow evidence about the police discovery of a knife and machete found at England's home because they were deemed prejudicial. The judge did permit testimony about gun parts and ammunition found at both Jack's and England's residences, but the state could not demonstrate that any of these were the murder weapon. And the defense argued that there were others who could have been responsible for Jack's disappearance who were not thoroughly investigated by police. England testified in his own defense at trial and told the jury that Jack had come to his house sometime between noon and 1 p.m. on the 16th. When he found out that his guns had been pawned, he was angry and he stormed off and left. A no-body case without expert testimony regarding the forensic evidence, without the murder weapon, and without details regarding the manner in which the murder went down, is doomed. All the jury really had to go on was that Jack had been at England's house, his blood was found in the garage and England's car, and after that time, his phone was turned off and he was never heard from again. In March of 2010, Brent England was acquitted after just 3 hours of jury deliberation. He walked away a free man, although he had spent a year in prison awaiting trial. Chief Deputy Prosecutor Rob Roberts said in a statement after the verdict, quote, "We knew when the charges were filed without a body being found that it was a hard case." He acknowledged that not having located Jack's body was a substantial obstacle for the prosecution to have to overcome, but said he felt the risk was worth it because the circumstantial evidence was so convincing. For example, England's girlfriend had testified that after the murder, England moved out of his house, stopped driving his car, stopped going to school, and quit his job. But it wasn't enough. In the opinion of the jury, there was reasonable doubt as to whether Brent England had killed Jack Barry. Now, as Prosecutor Roberts pointed out, quote, "At this point in time, we know we still have an unsolved homicide or missing persons case." Prosecutors and police still believe that Brent England is guilty, but he cannot be retried for the murder of Jack Barry Jr. Needless to say, the Barry family was extremely disappointed in this verdict. As Connie Barry, Jack's mother, left the courtroom, she said of the acquitted Brent England, quote, "The Lord will take care of him come Judgment Day." Jack Barry Sr. said, quote, "I thought the evidence was overwhelming myself." He still believes that England was responsible for Jack's death and for the disposal of his body, and he thinks that England had help. At this point, the family would just like to be able to bring Jack home. When he disappeared, Jack Barry Jr. was 32 years old, 5 foot 10 inches tall, between 150 and 160 pounds, and had short brown hair and brown eyes. He had numerous tattoos all over his body. Mike Morford sat down with Jack Barry Sr. to discuss his son's case. That conversation is coming up after a word from our sponsors.
Hi, Jack. Thank you for joining me on Missing Persons to discuss your son Jack Jr.'s case with us.
You're quite welcome.
Your son Jack Jr. vanished 12 years ago on December 16, 2008, right before Christmas. And obviously the holiday season just passed. Is that a tough time for you when you go through every year that passes to have to know that the holidays are coming? Does that remind you of your son and what happened to him?
Yeah, for a long, long while, every day did. I told the detective that it consumed about 23 and a half hours of my day. but I guess you learn to live with it. I have to.
Yeah, nobody should have to, but unfortunately, I don't think you're alone. I think a lot of people, they get consumed with trying to find the truth, and in some regards that, makes you a victim, and other people that go through that because they lose something too.
Well, we actually know or think we know the truth, but there's not a whole lot we can do about it.
That's something we're definitely going to get into. I want to talk about, but before we do, can you tell us a little bit about your son Jack and what kind of person he was? Some of your memories of him.
Well, he started out when he was a little kid. Of course, he was the last child I had, and of course I took him everywhere with me, and I took him on paint jobs and in the truck, and just wherever I went, he went. And then as he got older, of course, he drifted apart a little bit, but I don't know. I guess I gave him everything that I could, and in fact, I was a painting contractor, and I got up in age, and I decided I'd let him have it, and I turned the business over to him, and he was kind of a happy-go-lucky guy early on, and he got a little more cynical as he got older. He started getting tattoos and all sorts of stuff like that, which I didn't approve of, but that's kids do their own thing, and he got to be old enough that I couldn't tell him what to do, so he did what he had to do.
I guess as growing up, you can't control, everything. That people have to grow up their own way, and they do their own thing.
Right.
But as a parent, I guess we all try and do the best we can, and hope for the best for them, and we always try to protect them no matter what.
Yeah, that's true.
Just before he went missing, what was going on in his life? Was there anything new or different or anything going on? Was it pretty much like normal? Oh,
no. He got to messing with some guy over here, and they was dealing some dope, I think. And I never did confirm that, but people have told me that. And a woman accused him of giving her some counterfeit money, which he denied. But anyhow, they told him that he couldn't have any firearms around his house and all this and that. And so he brought them over to me, and I had them all here. And one day I mentioned to him that since he couldn't have them, he ought to sell some of them. And that was the thing that triggered the whole situation here. He had two pistols that were mates. They were exactly alike, and they were fairly expensive. And I've never saw them to this day. Never did see them. But he thought I was going to take them and sell them. And that's when he took them to this Brent England's house. That was his good buddy, and he thought let him keep them. Well, Brent took them. He was on drugs too, and he took a pawn shop and pawned them. And JB went, for a long while and tried to get a hold of him to get them, and he wouldn't return his calls. Well, then he decided that he was going to go to his house and catch him home when he got home from lunch, and that's what he did. He parked about a block and a half away from his house and went over to see him, and that was the last I ever heard of him.
That day on December 16th, 2008, when he went to his house and your son came up missing, how did you find out that he was missing? What made you know that something was wrong?
Well, we didn't know that day, but it was a day or so later that one of his friends called us and said, "Hey, where is he?" Said they went to his house and he wasn't there, but his dog was in the house, and his dog was barking and everything, and the house was locked up, and they wondered where he was at. So we didn't know, and they called the police, and the police broke in the house and found the dog, and got the dog out and everything. But JB he wasn't there. And then the police, my son-in-law is a policeman, and he had a couple of friends, and one of them found his van over about a block and a half from Brent's house, and that's how we knew, that where he had been. Then, of course, Brent admitted that he had been to his house, but he said he left, and he said he left in his van, which he didn't, because the van was parked away from him. That's about the end of it.
The police became involved, I guess, because I take it at some point you had to involve the police. Your son's missing. His car being found, what did that tell the police? Did they talk about that with you? And did it make you nervous that, hey, his car's no place around?
Somebody knew that he was going over to this guy's house to collect. One of his friends, I think, knew that he was going over there and they looked in this guy's in his garage, and they found some blood on a box, and so they called in officers from all around this area here, and they searched. I don't know, the river bottoms and all this and that. The state police brought in helicopters and searched the Wabash River, and just all sorts of stuff. And then later on, we had we didn't. My wife's niece had some psychics come in. I think they were from all out on the East Coast or somewhere. And there was about 20 of them came in, and they searched and for about a week or so. And of course, then we've had all the family out looking and everything else, but we never did find anything. And of course, this kid was found innocent, or not. He was found not guilty, and he wouldn't tell. The prosecutors told him, said it would be nice if he could say where he was located, and that since he couldn't be tried again. But he said, I don't think that's going to happen, and it didn't. So we've never found him.
So let's talk about that. Did the police only go down the road of looking at this one guy, or were they pretty convinced it was him, or did they look in any other directions as well?
They looked into some a little bit, I think, but there was another guy or two that he had trouble with, but that was the guy that he had got the counterfeit stuff with. But they had pretty well narrowed it down to this Brent England. In fact, they called him in, and they found a bunch of blood in the back of his car. But this kid convinced the police, can you imagine now, they convinced the police that was fake blood from Halloween. And
how long did it take for them to say, no, that's not the case, that's real blood?
I can't remember. It was a matter of a couple of weeks or so, I think. I can't really remember the timeline now, but I know they called my wife and I into the police station, and they told us that they found all this blood, and it was his blood, and he he had to be deceased. No, that was when they got this kid in, and they grilled him and everything, but he was real cool about everything. He acted like, just, I didn't do it, and that was it. They arrested him. He was in jail for right at a year before he went to trial.
And you mentioned it. There's blood there. The police find out there's blood. It's real blood. It's not Halloween blood. They're able to do some DNA work and determine that the DNA of that blood most likely belonged to your son.
Right.
So
right.
At that point, did England change his story and say that your son was there and somehow got hurt, or did he just not have any excuse for that?
Well, at the trial, now I wasn't there firsthand, but they told me they wouldn't let me go to the trial. But they tell me that he said that JB had cut his leg at a park, and he had to bandage it there on the trunk lid of his car, or on the trunk of his car. And that's the only explanation he ever gave for it. But we know that he didn't cut his leg, so because he had something done to his leg earlier on, and you couldn't get that much blood out of cutting your leg unless you bled to death.
So it was a lot of blood.
Yeah.
Predators. Their acts are evil. We call them monsters. We say no human could perpetrate the crimes they have committed. But in truth, only human beings execute these horrific acts. And if you're like me, you want to know why. To find out, join me, Ariel Cooksey, on my podcast Malice. As a social psychologist, I dig into the psychology, sociology, neurobiology, child development, trauma, and other factors that come together to create malicious offenders. Find Malice wherever you listen to podcasts.
So the police seem to focus on England as a suspect. He's eventually arrested. He's goes to court through a trial. Did that give you some kind of hope? Were you hopeful that there was going to be a good outcome?
Well, yeah, I did. In fact, I told the prosecutor later on. I said, after he was found not guilty, I said, I at this point, I don't really care if he's found guilty or not. I just would want to know, what happened to him and if we could, retrieve his body. But that didn't happen either.
And that's what I wanted to ask you about too. As far as coming to terms, thinking that your son's dead, how important was it to you to at least get his remains back?
Well, it's important even to this day. That's one of my goals, but it's not looking like it's going to happen. We've searched everything, and now that he's found not guilty, I mean, there's no other explanation for his death outside of what they've got, and we know 99 and 9/10% sure that this kid did it. We don't know how, but we know when and we know where. We kind of think now, or I think anyhow, that he took his body across the state line, and his dad had this was December and it was real cold that time, and everything around here was froze, the ground. But his dad had a friend that had some construction equipment. We think maybe he took a backhoe and buried him somewhere over there. We don't know. But that's just one of my thoughts that what happened to him. Now, he has moved, I think they said he moved out of state. One of the detectives kind of keeps an eye on him In fact, one of his old girlfriends told us that he had buried him on a place over in Illinois, but there again, police and state police and a whole bunch of people searched that area with a fine-tooth comb and couldn't find anything.
He goes to trial, he gets off, he's found not guilty. It was a technicality, and some things were thrown out. Can you talk a little bit about what it was that was thrown out?
Well, I don't think there was anything like that was thrown out. The fact that there was no body played an important part. Plus, there again, now this is my words, not everybody's, but I think what we had was a mediocre prosecutor up against a top-notch lawyer. This kid's dad owned a business down here, and he had to sell it to pay the lawyer. Then he went and got another job somewhere. I don't think there was anything that this lawyer. He's really sharp. He's one. If you're in trouble in Terre Haute, that's who you get. If you want to get out of it, and that's who they got.
So, how much of a letdown was it when he walked away free and he was the best suspect in your son's case?
Terrible. I hit bottom, I guess. I was kind of numb. I didn't know what to say or anything, because we was almost sure that he was gonna be convicted, and we figured if he got convicted, he was, he might tell somebody, but he sat in that jail for over a year, or right at a year, I should say, and never once mentioned it to anybody. So he's pretty tight-lipped about it.
The shame is that even if he did kill your son, that he could come forward now since he's been tried and found not guilty and admit to it and never face any consequences.
That's right. That's what I hear anyhow.
Yeah, that's got to leave you. You mentioned hitting rock bottom. That must have left you just devastated.
Yep, that's about it. Now, another situation or thing that we think about, or I think about anyhow, is this kid wasn't strong enough to lift his body out of that trunk by himself. So we think that his dad or somebody helped him to get him out of the trunk of that car. But I don't know. His dad has since died. The only people that know, and we heard that he had moved down to southern Illinois or southern Indiana or somewhere.
Well, so after the trial, after he walked away, you're back to square one. In the years that followed, was there any more efforts to at least continue looking for your son's remains?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we searched fields, we didn't search river bottoms again. The state police did that again, and I don't think the policemen did, but there was all kind of people that went out. In fact, one of his friends found some a deer carcass or the bones, and he thought by a strip pit up here, and he called the police, and the police came and got him, but they found out it was a deer rather than human bones.
And that must have been a letdown when you hear some excitement that some remains have been found, and they turn out to be not related to your son.
Yeah, right.
And so at this point, do you still hold out hope that somehow, some way his remains will be discovered, or in your mind, have you accepted that you're probably never going to get the answer that his remains were found?
I've almost accepted I'll probably never know. I certainly would love to know, but I'm going on 83 years old now, and time's coming up short.
And your son left behind a young son of his own. How has he's had to grow up without Jack Jr. in his life. How has he coped with it and handled it?
Well, he seems to be all right now. He's a teenager now. But he took it pretty hard to start with. He couldn't believe that his own, of course, he knew this kid that did it. And he couldn't believe that he would hurt his dad, but I don't know. I think he, now I don't see him too much anymore. Since he got older, he's, doing that teenage stuff, and of course he just graduated from high school, so I don't see him all that much.
Hopefully he's coping the best he can and making the best he can out of himself. Your son officially remains a missing person, but that's just a formality. You believe he's dead. I guess the only thing at this point that would really help just ease your mind would be finding out the truth. If that person that was acquitted or found not guilty, I should say, of your son's murder, would you ever accept any kind of information from him or an apology or anything to help you with your grief?
Yeah, it would tremendous. I mean, at this late date, I don't, what can you say? I mean, he's gone and you can't bring him back. So, I would just like to know, what he did with him and all that. They're here a couple of years ago. They found some remains in a field down in southern Illinois, about 10 miles from where this kid lived, and the police were all searching that. And my brother-in-law and I even went down there, and but they found it wasn't him; it was another guy.
When you hear that news, again, it's sort of like the deer carcass. You hear that, and I'm sure you think for a second, maybe they're finding my son, only to have that dashed.
Yeah.
Well, one last thing I want to ask you before, as a parent, you've gone through all the ups and downs of having a missing child and a suspect being arrested, going to court, only to have that suspect, walk away free. You've had a lot of ups and downs, and based on all of that, what advice would you give to another parent who has a missing child, whether they think they know what happened to them or not?
I honestly don't know what advice I could give someone. It's something that you're just, it's hard to live with, but life goes on. You've got to do it. I don't know. I don't know what I would say to someone.
Yeah.
I really don't.
And I guess every situation could be a little bit different for each person, and there's probably no universal advice, but if anyone can learn from the experience, like you've seen sort of the ups and downs and hope lost. And at this point, you sound like it's not going to be any answers coming your way, which is unfortunate. But
I always thought that if someone could go over and get with his mom, she just might turn the information over. I don't know. She was supposedly a real Christian church-going woman and all this and that, but because I don't think Brent himself would ever fess up, but I don't know.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, because sometimes people change. They have a conscience. They want to clear their conscience, or maybe they were afraid of someone years ago that they're not afraid of now, and they decide that they're ready to to share some information. And who knows, maybe someone heard what happened and has some answers that they'll provide at some point.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Wow.
That we've seen that happen in another case here in town, where a guy had murdered this girl years ago, and no, that they never could find out about it. And he finally confessed. He said he'd found Jesus and all this and that, and he confessed, and they sent him to prison.
Oh. Well, I think that goes to show that it's never too late, and even though it may take a lot of time, sometimes these cases are solved. So I hope for your family's sake that somehow, some way, you do find out what happened to your son.
Well, we're always holding out hope.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you joining me and discussing his case and helping us understand the case a little bit better.
All righty. I appreciate your interest in it.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, we hope that you'll contact the appropriate authorities.
We hope that you'll tell your friends about Missing Persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will really help us grow. And if you'd like to help us reach new listeners, please be sure to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on.
We'd like to tell you a little bit about our Patreon program. If you visit patreon.com/missingpodcast, you can sign up to help this podcast through ongoing monthly support. As a thank you, we'll give you an on-air shout-out, a thank you card and sticker, plus you'll get ad-free early access to every new episode of Missing Persons, as well as any bonus content.
Your Patreon support also goes directly towards helping the missing, because every dollar that we earn through Patreon will be split with two worthwhile causes that benefit the efforts to bring missing people home: CharlieProject.org and Private Investigations for the Missing. Your Patreon support will really go a long way towards helping. We hope you'll consider supporting the show. Just a reminder, new episodes of Missing Persons drop every other Saturday. If you want to find us on social media, you can search Facebook for Missing Persons Podcast. We're also on Twitter with the handle @missing_pod. And of course, you can always find us on our website, missingpersonspodcast.net. As we wrap up this episode, we'd like to play a preview for you for The Frozen Truth, a really good true crime podcast that's launching a new season. I hope you'll check it out. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.
Well, my name is Scott Fuller, and I have a podcast called Frozen Truth, and I go to where a mystery is, and I try to figure out what happened, basically. Coming up in Season 4 of the Frozen Truth podcast. And the car is the first thing that draws you into this case. The car is open, the doors are not locked, the key is still in the ignition.
We need to find out why this detective thought the most likely scenario was this woman parked her car and drowned herself and her 5-year-old son in a river.
Where are the bodies? I mean, that was my first thought.
Because there have been no clues that she staged her disappearance or was abducted.
Now, I don't know for sure that this record is missing. I mean, my antenna's up now. I'm very interested. I'm Scott Fuller. Please join me for a new season of Frozen Truth, available wherever you listen to podcasts.